Hello and welcome back to Breaking the Consensus here at Protect Life. Today I am delighted to welcome to the conversation Deputy Michael Collins down there in the most, well, it's obviously one of the most beautiful parts of Ireland. I say one of the most beautiful places anywhere in the world. It's Southwest Cork, place I'm genuinely enormously fond of. You're a very lucky man to be down there on, well, is it a beautiful day? A beautiful sunny day in Clonakilty?
I'd love to say I'm actually I'm further west than that. I'm back out west in the Mid, one of the most spectacular places in the world. But sadly, it's a bit foggy and misty. It hasn't been a great summer. You know, we've grabbed a day here and a day there, and you know it's a bit disappointing. But look, we always be hoping that there's something better around the corner. But we're thronged with visitors from all over the country, and you know, I think in fairness, they're staying here. They're here in a safe manner as they can, and it's lovely to see them.
Right. It's early yet. I mean, on the mizzen it could clear. It could turn into a beautiful day.
It could, and you know we've August ahead of us now, and you know in September I've often seen September to be the most beautiful month of the year, and of course I love September because it becomes the mizzen and the whole West Cork area comes back to yourself a little, and you have beautiful weather, and it's quite relaxed at the moment. The biggest trouble I see, believe it or not, is driving the rural roads and people down from the cities, and they see briars and bushes. They don't understand what they are, and how they're out across the feet in the middle of the road. I'm telling you, we'd be swinging left and up in the ditches, and we're well used to it here. But it's quite a scary test. But for a lot of the no disrespect to the city folk, they're lovely, they're great to have them. But my God, when they see a little nickel or a little bit of a briar sticking out, they'd go anywhere. But to touch
they hard to put in. So I have to ask, Michael Collins, in the part of the world that you're on, any relation?
No, I'd love to think that you know that I would have some connection, and I'm great. A great, I suppose, affiliation to Michael all my life, because I couldn't be any other way. He's there's a picture of Michael in every one of my offices. Michael Collins, and in military uniform. And even when I walked the corridors of Dáil Éireann, I suppose, especially in the first 4 years, I felt like at sometimes I could hear him behind me or in front of me with his hobnail boots, and he clipping the ground. But you know, I genuinely, I've said to a lot of people in my life, I wouldn't be fit to tie his shoelaces. But no relation, unfortunately. But in August, I always go to Bale-na-Blá, take my kids there and stuff like that. You know, he's the man I bow to, and when the mention of Michael Collins or politics comes before me, because he done a lot for this country, and you know, it was history that proved the greatness of Michael Collins, you know, and that's what was it De Valera said, that Collins will become a hero at my expense at some stage in his life, and it turned out maybe to be that. But he's a truly outstanding figure in our history.
Indeed. So, what is your your own background? You're from a farming background, or a political family?
Funny, strangely enough, we weren't, and of course, you know, when you go into politics and you end up in the council or end up as a TD, you'll be accused of sure, he's this and he's that, and he's Farmer Fine Gael. Oh, he's Farmer Fine Gael, of course. I'm sure he has to be something to do with Labour, and he has. But believe it or not, I had nothing to do with any political party. I always had a love for politics. I suppose maybe having the name I had, it focused me into politics more than anything else. My father was working in the local creamery as a creamery store manager. My mother was a housewife, and she had enough to do to rear four pups and a girl. and she had her hands on. Was a woman that worked hard. She done a bit of bed and breakfast, and when in the late 60s, when nobody knew what bed and breakfast meant, out in the Mizenhead. But what it meant is that my father was very careful not to even mention politics at home, because he was afraid that, you know, to upset the customer. So he even though we used to always watch Today Tonight, he had always a focus on politics and the news. Politics was never at the forefront, so I never knew who my father voted for. We were always trying to figure it out as we got older. maybe had a bit of an inkling, but never taught us, are the same as my mother. So politics was well, it was discussed at home. It was never a political party as such was never discussed. So of all the media out there that said he was farmer Fianna Fáil and I'm farmer Fine Gael, I was farmer Labour, I was farmer none. Thanks be to God. And it's the greatest way to be inside Dáil Éireann, to think I have no political connection with any political party. I have no disrespect to them, but I certainly will hold them to task, and I can do that without looking over my shoulder and saying, do you know what, sure, I was with him one time or I wasn't, and that's fine if you are, but that's I genuinely wasn't. And I did actually go to the first meeting of the Progressive Democrats that was held in Bantry, and because my uncle pulled me along. I was only a small young fella, I'd say. I could be wrong, that was in 1979, and I was only 11 years of age, but I went to that, and so maybe that was the beginning of something anyway. But I won't say I was a PD either.
No. Well, was there a particular issue or that initially sparked you? I mean, you can be interested in politics, but there's a big jump to that moment where you actually put yourself before the people, because I think people have never done it don't understand. It is a very, very hard task to put yourself in front of the people and ask them for a vote, because the rejection, if you are rejected, it's a very hard thing to take. So was there one thing in particular that made you think that you really wanted to get involved in electoral politics?
Well, I served a very long apprenticeship, and I think for anyone that's interested in politics, if they think in the morning, well, some are lucky enough that they can, because they might put a party on it, and there might be a swing towards a party on the day. But if you want to go into politics and to have a clear focus when you're in politics, you want to do a long apprenticeship. And how I done an apprenticeship was, and it wasn't my intention to enter in politics. I was involved in about 20-25 community voluntary groups right through West Cork. Obviously, it started in Goleen, it went to Skull, Balladahob, then it broke onto the Skibbereen, Benders, and I was involved in rural transport. But I started getting involved, and that was fine. I was happy out, because you could politicians and not be in any way criticize yourself as a politician, but and I was, and then the country went from boom to bust, and then we started holding meetings. As I was like farmer too as well. We had a small farm at home, and milking 5 cows by the hand, and I milked them by the hand myself too. It was a great training when you're growing up, pulling tishels pulling graysacons, and cutting tishels, if you ever heard them. But anyway, that's the we'd be. That was our summer holidays. Wasn't looking for foreign trips or holidays at all. But anyway. We found when the country went from boom to bust, we held a lot of public meetings, and we found that our politicians would not turn up at the meetings. And good God, no matter whether you can resolve something or not, turn up at your public meetings and listen to the outcry or the worries that the people have, and do your best to see can you resolve them. And you'll get flack on the day, and you'll get ate alive in some ways, and that's fair enough too. People are angry, and if you think you deserve it, you fight back, and no matter what, just but you stay there and you go to the meetings. And every one of those meetings I went to, the politicians of the day weren't turning up. We were giving them fair notice. We used to hold them over the weekends. We'd hold them on the Monday night. We'd do everything to accommodate them, and they wouldn't turn up. And some politician said to me one day, he said to me and my team, when we were angry with him, we said, "This isn't good enough." He said, "Do you know what you do? Go in and put your name in the ballot box and see how far it'll get you." And I walked out of the office that day, and I said, "Right, God, right, okay, boy, game on." And there was a council election coming up. I put my name forward. I got 3,600 votes, which, in fairness, was like 1,800 was the majority. And I met that same politician in the council that day, and I thanked him very much. I said, "No," and he was a TD, and I said, "No, be careful, because I'm coming after your job next," and I did.
Well, that was for first time out in the council election, that's a tremendous vote.
You
obviously had a lot of work behind you.
People were saying to me when I was at that work, "For the love of God, Michael, would you go into the council, because you're doing the council work and you're getting nothing for it?" And I was happy out, like, because the only thing is that plus pressure, right? Because I was away quite a lot, and I was trying to, trying to juggle work, because you weren't getting paid for going to voluntary meetings, but you could be 5 or 6 or 7 hours away. So you're maybe jumping off your job at 4 in the evening, and you mightn't get home until 1 o'clock in the night, and you're away quite a lot. But at that time I was comfortable doing the community voluntary thing, but when I was frustrated, the issues that we wanted raised at council level or at Dáil level weren't being raised, and I made the jump from council, and I was 2 years in the council when the Dáil election came up, and it was a gamble, but I had a lot of work done in the 2 years in the council, and being a councillor is a lot more difficult than people see. because you have no staff. You must do everything yourself. Your phone never stops, the same as the TD. And but I kept putting forward motions and pushing the council to the limit and pushing the opposition and pushing, no matter what it is. I'm not here to pose things. I'm here to try and see, can we get things done? But the issues that were being put to me from all parts of West Cork were coming back up at council level, and people appreciated that. And when it came to the Dáil election, I was elected in the second count or whatever, and subsequently didn't win the Dáil election the last time, and thankfully I headed the poll. But there's a lot of work going into that. I'm telling you, I heard a minister saying the other night that they needed extra money, and they voted for Super Junior ministers getting extra money yesterday. I don't think that's right, but anyway, look, I voted against it. But I heard him saying that, we're working till 11 o'clock at night. I fully understand and respect what he said is right. I don't see some nights, I don't see the bed till 2 or 3 o'clock. And that's the way it is. And you're up again at 7 or 8 in the morning, and it's a tough slog. And I know that people will say, you're well paid. I get less than 50. I get 50% taxed on my wages. I don't want to sound looking for sympathy, but I can tell you, every brown cent I earn goes back into politics, and a lot more. And sometimes outside of my work, outside of my politics, I do other work jobs as well, and they're funding my job. So that'll tell you how difficult, because you have offices, you have things that people don't see the expenses going to. But look, I love the job. That's the main thing. I love the job, and it's a great. I'm lucky. I'm a lucky person. That's what I am, to be able to represent my people.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, you at a certain point that you must enjoy it. You must enjoy people. I mean, you can't do this job unless you enjoy people, because you're going to get a lot of different types of people with different opinions.
Absolutely, and it's one of the things there's a gentleman there, he's my right-hand man, Con McCarthy, and he cracks the whip and I jump. And he says to me, the first time I got elected Dáil, and he said the very first day he rang me back again after the celebration night before, first thing in the morning, a phone call, Con, how's it going? He says, know what's on? I said, what? The next election. You have to be watching. And as soon as I won the election the other day, sorry, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months ago, next call, the first thing in the morning, he said, what's on? Of course, the head was gone again. I said, well, no, what's on? Next election, Mike. Straight away, thinking of the next election. So the very day you're elected, you have to think of the next election. And how do you do that? And how do you work with the people? Obviously, in a pandemic, it's a total different situation. But what I usually do is I tend, with functions that I'm asked to go to, public meetings that are out there that I'm asked to go to, and I always have clinics. And I clinics right through West Cork, whether you're down in Kinsale, in Shannon, back into Bandon, back into Clonakilty, back into D Hall, Dep, Glenmore, Skibbing, Ballinhob, Goleen, or the other side, Castletown Bear, Glengarriff, Cale Kilbantry, down Drimoleague, Dunmanway, and back into Ballineen. That's the geographics of my constituency. It's probably the biggest sprawled out constituency in Ireland, probably one of the least related constituencies, but just sprawled out, absolutely sprawled out. And I have people coming to me from other constituencies, and but I'm accessible. So I go to a pub, or go to a hotel, or go to a community centre, in those places, whichever is available to me. It could be Iree's, Alhe's, anywhere at all. I go to them places and meet people once a week. And sometimes I go and there might be nobody. I could go the following week and there'll be 7 there. So you don't know. The little draw, and you're there and you're accessible to people, and people want that.
You're very much associated with what some people have called the Cataract Coach, something that now a number of other TDs have become involved in. Can you just tell us a bit about that? How you came to think of it, and what it was, and how you execute it?
There was a lot of luck, in fairness, attached to it. I was above at the ploughing championship, and it was a kind of a damp day, and I had a cap in me head out nearly down over my eyes, and I was walking past the stand, and this guy said to me, he said, would you like to hear about the cross-border directive? And I said, yeah, far away. So and he started to explain to me, if people need procedures like cataracts, hips, knees, they're entitled, once they pay for the operation up front, they're entitled to get reimbursed, and their operation can take place. And I said, how soon? Oh, he said, maybe in the space of 2 or 3 weeks. And I remember I lifted the cap off my head and I said, explain this to me. He says, you make it 10 meters that if somebody has €1 million in their account, or have 0 in their account, if they can find the money to pay you for their hip, which could cost 10 grand, or their cataract, which could cost 2,000, can they be operated in Belfast, as he was, the company he was, or the hospital he was with, was in Belfast, and get reimbursed? He said, absolutely. There's no such thing as means test or anything like that. He says, once they find their money. And I said, what are you doing next week? And he said, why? I said, what are you doing? He said, I want you down in Dáil. And I said, I said, I'm a TD, put the cap off my head. I meet you down, and I met him the following Wednesday, and I got the rule independent group that I'm involved in to meet him around the table. And I said, guys, this is it. He explained the story. Some took the bait, more didn't. I turned around to Danny Healy-Ray. Danny was there, and I walked out the door and said, Danny, I said, I'll tell you how this is going to work. He said, what? I said, I'm inundated with people going blind with cataract operations in Cork. I am too, he says, in Kerry, and I can't get them sorted. I said, we book a bus, find out how much it was, which it turned out to be €1,000. You pay 500, I pay 500, and we'll fill the bus and take it to Belfast. And he said, do you know what, we will. So we rang out, we went back to our lists of people that we were promising we'd try and get them in Cork, which was never happening. Some were blind at this stage, some hadn't, most of them hadn't. They were barely able to see. We filled that bus. We rang Kingsbridge Private Hospital in Belfast, filled that bus. Filled now, maybe 16. They took 16 on one day, which meant 8 each way, and took 8 members of their family, filled the bus, took it to Belfast. The media absolutely loved it because it was a good story and it was a true story. Everybody now in the situation, that was a free bus. We're 50-something buses later. There's another bus going up for the first time since COVID started next week. But what we do is we charge everybody €50 on the bus, which is small, 25 to Belfast, 25 home. They pay for the overnight stay themselves because I book a hotel, the Europa Hotel, and they pay for that themselves. They have the consultation on their arrival in Belfast, so they leave maybe Cork and West Cork. I'll be picking them up in the mornings, but we'll say they leave around maybe 8 o'clock. They're in Belfast around 2 or 3 o'clock. They have a consultation. They go back to the hotel. The morning after they go in, have their operation, the bus brings them back. We meet them in Cork City and take them back to their respective, my brother, my sister, myself, and we take there's another fella in trouble. We take them back to their homes, cataract free. It couldn't be more simplified, and it couldn't be it was the greatest. Do you know what? Somebody said to me, "You were like the Lord." It was like a miracle you brought to people because you regain their sight, and they never forget you for doing so. But what I also said to Danny Healy was, I don't care if somebody rings me from Dublin, Mayo, Wexford, Waterford, we'll accommodate him, and we've done that because on the motorway, on the way up, we tell them, be it exit such a thing at such a time, and the bus will pull in and take you and your loved one with you, and you'll get the Belfast. They can't believe that they get. Sorry, they can't believe that they're getting that type of service. Hold on, I just turned that down a bit.
How many people can get? How many people could be operated on in one day?
They do about 16 for us, and 16 for us. I don't know what they're doing outside of that because they're obviously extremely busy, and they're absolutely inundated with work, and you can see why. Now, what we've done is a lot of people may not have the €2,000. A lot of people may not have the 10,000 for the hip or the knee. So what we done was we tied up a kind of an agreement with the credit union down here in West Cork, and I presume it's the same everywhere. It's this kind of a government guaranteed scheme as such. It's a government guaranteed scheme that they are going to get their money back. So the credit unions are quite happy once they get a letter or proof if the person has an account and they get the money. So what they're doing is kind of giving a bridging funding. So if they need it, so they get the 2,000 for the operation, and they'll wait for the 2 months and they get the 2,000 back and they'll hand it back to the credit union. And so it's worked out very well like that.
It's around it's a 2 month wait to get the reimbursement.
It's 2 to 3 months, and it should only be 2 to 3 weeks. But unfortunately, I'd say they're just inundated. Now, I've been talking to the crowd that are dealing with the reimbursement, and they're lovely people up there, and they get a lot of criticism, but they're just bursting in with work. Prior to COVID, of course, people going to the north, availing of it. We kind of opened up something that was there. It was like a little loophole or some little thing that was there that others didn't know about, and people are availing of that right throughout the country. And a lot of people don't need us. Once they ring me from somewhere, I'd say, do you know what, you could actually jump on the train because the Kingsbridge Private Hospital is right beside the train. They didn't realise that, and they're going up themselves. So I don't know. I think in total we have 1,500 maybe plus people seen after, have operations, have their sight back, have their hip replaced, and are back on their feet. And that means a lot to people. And there's a lot of work in it, though, but it means a lot to people. We're lucky to have found that little loophole.
I mean, for yourself, if you never did another thing in politics, is it a wonderful thing to be able to look back on and say, well, I was responsible in some way of helping people to regain their sight, regain their mobility, so that now they can, I'm not being flippant, but they can go to a match and enjoy and sit and watch Kerry play football or watch the parish play hurling or whatever. And that's a wonderful thing.
definitely. And I suppose I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet. I'm so busy, I don't get time to kind of sit back and say, wow, that was great. But tis the phone calls afterwards you get from people saying, you know, that I have my sight regained. I'll never forget you for what you've done. But the biggest thing I find today is people regaining their driving license. So they're failing the test, the eye test, the plus 70 plus,
Right, of
to get their
course.
eye test done because they have a cataract. They don't know where to turn. They ring me. Once they tell me it's urgent, I put what I usually do, maybe being trying to be a bit cute, is that I hold on to a seat to the very end, even though I could have a list a mile long. But someone might ring me, God Almighty, I've just been in, and they've told me I have a cataract and I can't get my driving license. I don't know what to do. I'd say, are you free? Are you free next Friday? And they'd say, for what? I get your cataract operation next Friday. Well, they'd be jumping for joy. Hop on the bus, up the road, they nearly walk. They nearly walk, and the next thing, back down. Week later, get their eye test done inside, pass the test, off driving again. They'd be thrilled, absolutely thrilled. So it's tied up with the driving license too, quite a lot for people, and it's a big worry. But it's a very quick way out. We can get this a very quick turnaround, and we have they're only taking 12 now next week, because of COVID. They have that bit of extra work to be done. There's a nurse coming down from Belfast to test them in my constituency office on Thursday next. She'll do the swabbing, they have the results, and each person, please God, will be COVID free, and their loved one is going to be tested as well, and the bus driver, and they're heading to Belfast next week. And that's the whole system in a nutshell. It's worked very, very well, and it's sad to think that we don't have a cataract theatre in Bantry General Hospital, where I'm very close to myself. I would serve the people to the best of its ability, or we don't have a cataract theatre in Cork. It has a small one. About 15, 20 years ago, there was meant to be Millen spent another one of those false promises, and nothing was delivered. And what they have is a very small filtering in a small number of people, not able at all to cope with the amount that we have that wanted to go. And as I said, it's resolved that situation, and please God, it continue.
Well, anyway, God bless that work. So now you have been widely, you're well known. You've been associated with the pro-life position. I was at a wonderful meeting in Bandon a couple of years before the referendum, where we filled out the room and more. And you were at it. You attended that. I remember meeting you at. Now, obviously, we were all disappointed, deeply disappointed by the result, and I suppose surprised by the nature of it. Or were you surprised?
I wasn't initially. If you asked me the question 2 months previous, I would have said absolutely not that type of result. I felt that media, of course, decided that they would help towards a landslide, and they have very strong controls, as you can see with politicians or whatever. The way they can, if they hone in on somebody, they can destroy you. Yes. And they hone in on this, and every media personnel, to a point, I think they got brainwashed themselves. And well, they're well entitled to have their views. Their views became the public's views, and the public's views just led to this kind of a massive victory. And like, I was doing an interview recently with a media outlet, and the person said to me, yet you're not liberal, and they went on about abortion, and yet you're not liberal enough. And obviously I knew the interview, her views were different to mine when it came to abortion, because I could know she was tilting towards that in her interview. And she said, that most likely will destroy you. And I said, well, I got about 7,000 votes, I says, in 2016, and people knew my views on abortion. And they certainly knew my views on abortion in 2020, and I got 11,700 votes. So I said, I think that answers your question. And I kind of knew she jolted back from the seat and said, oh God, I shouldn't have said that, because, so obviously in that 11,700 was people that did vote yes for abortion and still voted for me. But the whole point was, I wasn't for changing. I made it very, very clear before my first term in office. It didn't really come into the council situation. It did come into when I went to national politics. And I wasn't going to be hiding my views, and I wasn't going to be changing my views. And what annoyed me mostly inside Galliard was the people that were opposed to it, and opposed to it, so strongly opposed to it. All of a sudden, it was the perfect thing. And it couldn't be the perfect thing so suddenly. There was difficult situations. The media honed in on that. I was on television defending, if a 14-year-old became pregnant, what would you mean to tell me you are maybe younger? And they were putting these questions, very, very tedious. They're genuine questions, but there was a lot of other issues that could have been discussed in this, and that was being discussed. The media tilted it a certain way, and the public fell into that trap. And they should have been more care for the public, like, and more thoughtful in their decisions. I have to respect their views. I will not be for changing. I'm not for changing, and I will never will be.
You say, obviously, yes, you have to respect the views and the vote, but to be fair, it's very difficult, I think, for people to make an really informed decision at the moment in Ireland about certain subjects, because the media has become so monochrome in many ways, hasn't it? It's increasingly difficult. I mean, if you look back to the papers, the way the papers were like in the 70s and the 80s, there was a fair bit in each paper you'd have a lot of different views and just points of opinion. Today, even though we live in this wonderful liberal world, there's increasingly the same opinions. Everybody seems to have the same opinions about the same things, and that means, do you think, is that a problem for us as a democracy?
Oh, absolutely! It's a huge issue. As far as I'm concerned, when I go to the Dáil, I try and be as careful and as judged. Read through stuff that I'm making a statement on. I got into some people say, some bit of trouble last year because they said, they were saying about people abroad and we should bring in more people in direct provision. And I was saying everybody counts. The man on the street in Ireland, including the person abroad, they all need to be cared for. And there was insanity. Oh, how dare you, racist remark, you don't want people coming in from abroad, blah, 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 blah. And I was saying, you don't bring them in from abroad and treat them the way we did. And I was being thrown under the lorry, and I was on national television, but I wasn't for changing. And the bottom line is I was correct, because they were brought in. You saw what happened in Castle Island. They were just like people thrown in, like you bring in a lorry load of cattle and throw them into a hotel and walk away and turn the key. And our government were camouflaging that with the media backing them. And it's, the same as my statement recently when they were on about Black Lives Matter, and I said every life matters, and I made a statement in the law, from the baby in the womb to the man or the woman, whether it be black or white, every life matters. And of course, that was a controversial statement because I didn't tick the box to the media, so the media were backing me. You can't say that.
Isn't it an incredible thing that it is a controversial statement? I mean, that every life matters is a controversial thing to say. Surely is a sign of some kind of a dysfunction in the way we're going about ourselves.
It certainly does, because it doesn't matter what color the skin you are. Every life, and it doesn't matter whether the baby is in the world or on the way to coming into the world. It all matters, and it doesn't. Unfortunately, in society we're living today, they were trying to tell me, and reporters were trying to tell me it's a waste of time, because I pre-read my statement. I wasn't for changing, and I'd take the same statement again tomorrow morning, send it out. It's on my Facebook. I just come back. I don't know, was it that time when that issue about the gentleman out in America that was killed? And I made that very clear, because I read through it and I said, no, every life matters here, and the Dáil needs to really understand that.
You were called around that time, that bit of controversy. Brendan Howlden called you a very dangerous man. I know you sound like a dangerous man. I was just wondering, David Quinn published a thing recently showing that we have an aging population, and the response has been that if we have an aging population, then we need to bring in more young people. But in the same piece of research, he showed that most people, quite a lot of couples in Ireland, would actually like to have more children than they feel they can afford. Do you think that we need to do more, as the government needs to do more, to support the family and to support people who want to make the choice to have maybe another child or another two children, that we have become in a funny way anti-family?
We have in society, people are working harder. They're working longer hours. Their wages is not meeting the expenses that are in their home. So people are under a lot of pressure. There's no doubt about that. But I just go back to the statement of Brendan Howlden. It's calling me a dangerous man. He's the same man in the Labour Party when they were in government that took the women's pensions away from them and their entitlement. And of course, he was quite a safe man. He must have felt at that time. But I call him a very dangerous man in his own right, that he he stood as a minister with Joan Burton, and the women's pensions were taken from the women, and that was a very dangerous thing. A lot of women today have been discriminated against shockingly because they're inside my clinics on a regular basis and they haven't got it back. But getting back to what you're saying, people are struggling severe. Families are struggling today. Even two good incomes coming into a house is not enough today. And that's the unfortunate situation we are, that the pressure isn't being taken off families. They're trying to pay mortgages. If they're working, they're paying creches, they're paying childminders, they're paying for 2 cars, they're paying, and there's no way of making it simplified. People don't see each other from the morning, from maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, and when they're finished in the night, there's only one place for them, is to just throw themselves down into the bed and go sleep, and because they're heading up in the morning. So there's a lot of pressure on people today, and I know people got a time to think during this COVID crisis, to try and think, but it's easy to think, but it's hard to find a way out of the challenges that are faced with people today. And I think that society is it's changed, and it's not enough effort is being put in by government to support families. We seem to be supporting everything and anything that doesn't need to be supported. We're supporting the families that are working hard. Those who get up in the morning and work hard during the day find that they're penalised the most at the end of their week.
And I've noticed that I think everybody is paying attention, when it comes to, say, supporting childcare, the larger parties seem to be obsessed with large-scale creche care and not doing anything for those people who would either support maybe child care, staying at home to mind their children, or to use family to care for children. Do you think we can do something about that? Maybe that's something we should be looking at.
I think they made it. I think they've been cut out as such. I know a lot of great childminders locally that looked after children as for parents that were working, looked after them in a very economically viable way, and looked after them very carefully, far more than the organised system, and gave the extra hour if there was a bit of overtime. The other person was either whatever, and quite happy. And the child grew up as part of the family as such, and the children are 2 or 3 children. And more statements in the last 3 or 4 years was they were nearly calling them criminals for doing it at home. They were setting in laws to prevent. Now they're caught. And Catherine Zappone was going the wrong direction. At the time, she's gone now, but she was going the wrong direction because she should have been supporting those who were minding children at home instead of making them feel like they were criminals. And there was a statement at the state. I used to see in the papers go, "Oh, he's up, lads, he's up. These people are not criminals. They're great people. They looked after people, and they need to be minded further." And now the government would love to think there was a system out there that all these people would be minded, because they can't. They're not able to do it in the creches all along. And you had people like nurses, like guards, that had to go to work and had no one to mind the child. And they were there taking holiday time. They were taking sick time. It was an absolute disaster situation that they found themselves in. And the government had their eye off the ball, because they're trying to pump everything into the creche and the play school, and give them as little money as possible, be expected to mind as many children as possible. And the system didn't work. It's blown up, and it's very, very, if we have a second rounds of this pandemic, I shudder to think what's going to happen, because people have used up their holidays. They don't know what they can do. And I've had nurses ringing me, I've had professionals basically ringing me saying, "Michael, can you do something with it all? What's going to happen to my child?" I had one parent telling me she had an 8-year-old child. The father was away working. What he was doing, he was going away and coming back and going away and coming back to the house. So that was the height of danger, she said, but I've no other choice because I haven't worked. She's a nurse. That was the situation. I think there was the focus was taken off of the home care, and there was loving home care given to children, and women looked after, and shouldn't say women, but that's mainly who it was, looked after children for 4 or 5 children inside the house, and they were happy out. And unfortunately, that isn't the case now.
I think a lot of people in the media have been surprised, and maybe grudgingly surprised, at how effective the Rural Alliance has been as a body, that there was an expectation that it would be flying all over the place, one day going here, one day going there. How do you find working with it?
With the Rural Independent Party, we are...
I meant the Rural Independence, yeah.
Because there's some great, I think was it Shane Ross from the Alliance, and it used to drive the lads mad when they hear it. Would we be mistakenly call that? But I don't worry.
Sorry, I know Shane Ross is not one.
No, I get that myself. Well, the thing is this: when in my view, first of all, you're independent, and you should be genuinely independent. And I'm very frustrated at the moment, and I'm not a bit afraid to say it, that there's an independent party inside, an independent group, sitting inside in the Dáil, the regional independent group, and they're voting every which way, no matter what issue comes up since the Dáil started. They're voting for the government. Sure, for the love of God, why don't they just join away? So most of them are Fine Gael, and go in and join them again, and stop their old fool acting around. And I mean, there is an issue that you would support them, and I respect that. And there's an issue that you won't support them. But like, to be pretending to be independent and to be backing them at every issue that's come before them. I was watching it yesterday in relation to the Super Juniors getting 16,000 more. They voted for him. In relation to Debenham workers, they voted for him. No matter what it is, they're going to vote for him, because there's little nod and wink packs done behind the scenes, and it's wrong. We're rural independent. We kind of stick as close as we can together. Obviously, in every election, there's somebody might lose seat or not run, and that did happen with Dr. Michael Hartley. He decided to retire. We obviously have different views in the independent group, so that can be difficult at times, because maybe in the abortion referendum or something like that, and the other thing was the road traffic bill. We had different views, but mainly we were together in most of our views going forward, and we put forward very strong. I mean, one of the first motions we had in 2016 was that they wouldn't allow the Children's Hospital go ahead and build where it was, because number one, we put forward a motion, the rural independent group, it was going to run over budget. We know how it did. It was in the wrong place completely, and it couldn't land a helicopter. And as far as I know, all three are correct. I mean, forget about the budget. And the very day that started running to the point of the budget, it did run on. And I'm talking about millions and millions. I'm not talking about a couple of 100,000 here and there. The minister that was in charge of that, if there was a proper Taoiseach in charge, he would have dismissed him immediately. And there was no accountability. And it was one of the reasons that I called the vote of no confidence. Because I remember going to the door of a person I knew that were kind of Green Party down here. And she said to me, when I went to the door, to look at canvassing for a vote. And she said, Michael, you know what? I knew before I go, and I was wasting my time, but should I go? Yeah. But she said to me, do you know what? She said, Michael, it is a waste of time voting for independence. She said, I can't do nothing. You just said, do you know what? She said, you're right. Sure, all I did is to brought down the government, because I put forward a vote of no confidence. And well, she went back and she went to look. But I laughed. The lads were with me. Well, they were laughing. You're just you're right. Sure, I just brought down the government. So we can't do it. And but look, we do have like-minded ideas. We've Richard Donohue's on our team now, and Carol Nolan, who got you know, well, we you know what happened there in relation.
I thought was an interesting that, for example, when talking about pro-life Team, that so many of the TDs who did hold the pro-life position, so I think a lot of people surprised ended up being returned. I mean, there is no doubt that there was a lot of pressure to take Carol Nolan's seat, and a lot of people expected Carol not to take the seat, but she came back. Peter Fitzpatrick up in Louth, and different men and women around that were targeted. Leader of Aontú, Padre Tobin, of course, they went after his seat big time, but they were returned. But Carol she did tremendously well.
Yeah, I think of all the TDs in that won a seat in throughout the country, I think that Carol Nolan was targeted for several reasons to take her seat on her, and it was an absolute incredible result for her to take. I was absolutely thrilled for her, because she's a genuinely lovely person, and just because she had a certain view, the party couldn't agree with that, and they got rid of her. But the fact they were in on her, and everyone was trying to get her out of that seat. And they thought there was a seat that was to be won, but she held strong. She's a strong, hard-working, well-educated TD, and we're very, very lucky to have her on our team in the rural independent group. And she's comfortable in that group as well. So there's no point in being in a group if we're not comfortable, and she's very much focused on the same way as we are.
So I just wanted to, with the times we live in, we can't ignore them. I'm here up in North Wexford, which is a traditionally big tourist area for Leinster, for Dublin at this time of year, and you're down in the southwest, big tourist area. Well, obviously, life is not normal. Tourism isn't as normal. Is it? Obviously, we're a different kind of a country, just a much smaller country. But for example, in Italy, the regulations were made to apply differently in different areas. We haven't had, for example, Do you think that the application of the same rules in the same for everyone in the same place is sensible, or is it really the only way to go to keep it simple?
No, they're making, in my view, they're making a very bad mistake. I think that it should be done region per region. You have to look at the situation that we're faced with at the present time. If we have a big outbreak again, if that's concentrated in around Dublin, obviously the rest of Ireland needs to heighten their safety guards. But certainly the areas in Dublin have to be sealed off and keep it like that. We seem to be, excuse me, there seems to be a rule for one, and that rule applies to all. And we saw that with the local pubs, the rural pubs. At the moment, on the argument, we're putting it up. You can freely fly in from any part of the danger parts of America and walk through Ireland, do what you want, but you can't open a rural pub had 5 or 10 customers, because what's happening is Dublin is dictating what's happening throughout the country, and that's where the mistake, and that's the rock they're going to perish on if they have a further closure, because there's a further outbreak in Dublin where there's a populated area, or even Cork or City, or even Galway or wherever. That area has to be sealed, deal within that area, and leave the rest of the country flow freely, because the country is on its knees after what's happening here. We have businesses hemorrhaging all over West Cork, and I'm not trying to put a bleak picture. It's a fact. There's no compensation. The stimulus package is only kicking the can down the road. Even if you look at the stimulus package in relation to the elderly people, they can't get that 120 something on their holidays because they don't pay tax, because they get a pension. They won't get nothing back, which is terribly unfair on them. A person that's on social welfare won't get 120 back because they're not paying tax. And for a lot of people, if you do, it's apparently pushed through to next year's tax, so it's kicked the can down the road. If you get your 125 euros, will be 2021, the latter end of that, before you get your money back.
I just see locally. I mean, when people talk about too much in the pubs, I mean, I wonder, maybe Dublin has one reality, but the rural pub and the rural pub culture is on its last feet. It's dying. And when I see little pubs in villages around here that really have nobody in them except maybe 2 nights a week, the idea that they should be treated the same as Temple Bar seems to me to be just bizarre.
I think the mistake that you see what happened initially was the pubs in Dublin, with all the messing in March or something, came up on social media, and the government came in straight away and closed them down. So they were the cause of the problem initially. So you don't have that problem at all down in rural Ireland. And I can't understand, and Danny Healy brought it up in the Dáil last week, he says, how does the coronavirus know whether you're having a 10-euro meal or not? When you're having a pint beside you? It's absolutely lunacy of the highest order. And what's happening is you have a high concentration of people going to one end of a town, and you have a pub on the upper end of the town closed. It's crazy. Excuse me. But like it don't make sense. But look, a lot of what's going on, in my view, don't make sense. My rural colleague, Matthew McGrath, has called it a scandemic in certain ways. Excuse me. And if you look at at what he's talking about, in certain ways, it can look a bit like a scandemic. I see there that the government purchased a PC-12 plane to fly out COVID tests to Germany at a cost of 5.something million. Nobody knows about these things. This is all behind the scenes. When I know that there was laboratories in Ireland willing to do 10,000 tests a week with a tiny little bit of investment, and they could have results within 4 hours, and they wouldn't even consider that. But to buy the plane sounds so dramatic. We're flying them out. We're saving Irish lives. That was taking days. By the time we got the test done, by the time they were flown out, by the time the results, it was all going on it has gone on longer, just 3 weeks for us, but they broke it down to about 3 to 4 days. I know in the morning, if somebody done a swab for me this morning, I'd have a result at 1 o'clock in the day. And we can do that in West Cork, and there's labs everywhere in Ireland that can be done. But no, the state pumped millions into everything else, but the local solution, it didn't pump into. I'm so sorry, I have about 2 or 3 minutes left because I have a clinic, and I'd be absolutely.
Okay, I'll leave you. I have one more question, and then I'll leave you on that. A lot of people are obviously going back to say the pro-life issue or other issues like say euthanasia or the coming up, and they want. One thing we're often asked, and I like to ask politicians, when it comes to lobbying your local TD or local councillor, what's the most effective way of doing it? What's the best way of trying to influence your local politician?
Going to the clinic and look at them in eye to eye. Because what happens with us is a lady looks after my emails, right? There's 200 emails coming in a day. And any one issue, someone from Wexford could be sending me an email, someone from Southwest Cork could be sending me an email, but they're not as effective as looking at TD in the eye, sitting down with them. What are you going to do? And stop this bunkum. They'll bunkum, and I was going to say another word, no, but I better not. And they have bull.
Okay, right.
And they'll basically lie and twist and turn everything they can in a way to pretend that they're just asking the straight question. Are you supporting this issue or not? And I'm very straightforward. Like, somebody comes up to me and says to me, will you vote for me? I'm not. And I give them a reason, be respectful and all that, or I am. I won't be in the middle. And that's one thing I've never done in life, and I hope I never done. I never abstain on anything. I'll vote one way or the other, even though it can be difficult at times, and you might be very close to the middle of the road, but I'll go one way or the other and give everybody. But look them in the eye, go to their clinic. I know that some of them are hidden well, but you're bound to find them at some stage or at a function or anything, walk them up and just be nice and say, excuse me, such a thing is here. It's a serious worry to me. Will you support? Are you supporting this or not? It's a yes or no issue. And follow through on it. If they like you, go back to them.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank you, Deputy Michael Collins, very much for taken your time out to join us today. I'd like to thank the viewers who are joining us in. I invite you to subscribe and to hit the like button on the videos here. We are going into a number of really important campaigns, and even at this difficult time, there are very serious issues facing it. So if you feel you can help us, if you can hit the donate button there, anything at all will be of a great help. But again, I'd like to thank Michael McGrath and say, stay safe, mind yourselves, and if I look forward to the day very soon when I can get down to West Cork and have maybe a pint and go lean.
Absolutely, be delighted to see you in Dinny O'Mara's or the Festive Bar or the Lobster Pot, one of the three. We might do a pint in each one of them. God bless you. Thanks.
God bless.
And thanks to your listeners too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.